During the pandemic and during a lot of this stress and pressure that we were under, I unfortunately had a few of my employees, more than one, more than two, take their own lives. You don't realize what somebody's going through on a Zoom call. Hi, I'm Janet Robertson, and you're listening to Tech Legacies Podcast.
This week, we have Janet Robertson, former CIO of aerospace and defense companies, telecom companies, a whole variety of Fortune 500 companies. Welcome, Janet. How are you?
I'm doing well, Fanny. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm so glad we have this chance to sit down. I know we've been chatting recently, and I always like to start with kind of like throughout your career, what was the best piece of advice you ever received?
You know, it's hard because you get so much advice, especially when you have really good mentors throughout your career. But I think the greatest piece of advice I've gotten is to be your word. And there's so many aspects to that. It's not just doing what you say you're going to do, but it really is everything from showing up on time. If you're on time, you're late. Showing respect, really doing what you say you're going to do, and really truly being your word. Acting the way you say you're going to act. Being kind if you say you're going to be kind. So I think be your word has been the best mantra that I've lived by and I've tried to be a good leader with.
I love that. Yeah, and obviously you've been through a whole gamut of different industries and careers. Was there a certain point that was like a low point for you that you had to kind of navigate out of?
Absolutely. The interesting story, when I started my career, early in my career, I was in consulting, and I worked for one of the big 6 consulting firms. And I had gone to work for one of our customers because their area of expertise was management training and e-learning. So I got to do some real tech work, but then got all this free leadership training. It was absolutely a spectacular time because it did not come naturally for me. I was an industrial engineer by degree. So I was tech, ones and zeros, and project management and consulting, so it was always getting things done and execution, and so I didn't have that leadership finesse. But this, as great as this job was, 9/11 happened in the middle of this career. And I was suddenly without job because when the economy goes south, training is a lot of what gets cut first. And my boss had to, after he got laid off that morning, lay me off, and I had to lay off my whole team. And it was a dark day.
Yeah.
And the years or the months following that, I was not able to find a job. The economy was rough, and I decided to take matters into my own hands, and I started my own consulting firm. I had done some work with the federal government, so I knew how to navigate how to be a woman-owned contractor and woman-owned business and try to bid on different government contracts. So I ended up working at the Transportation Security Agency with my consulting firm and the IRS, which was interesting in itself. But it was during that low time when I made the decision to start my own consulting firm that I was even stringing tennis rackets at a sporting goods store to make ends meet. So I think that was the defining low point of my career, having been on this high and this great journey in consulting with big firms, great customers, and then doing all this leadership learning, that I then found myself stringing tennis rackets. But it was interesting pivot point for me. And that's kind of how I navigated my way out of it. But there was a time that it was pretty dark when I was putting on khaki pants and a green polo.
Yeah.
But it happens.
Well, and in a way, I think it teaches us to be humble. Right? Like I was talking to another CIO that took a while for him to find his next role, and because there's only so many CIO roles.
Exactly.
And at one point, he just decided to go stock shelves at Target. And just to have something to do, just to get out, and he's like, it was very like liberating for him. That we're really not bound by our titles.
It really is, and you're really realize how to respect people that do all different jobs. And you can enjoy your time in the work that you do and still take pride in the work that you do, no matter what you're doing.
Yeah.
That's an exciting time.
Was there something in that dark period that kind of flipped you around? Because it's so easy to go down the rabbit hole. What kind of pivoted you, or was there a quote or someone you talked to or a mental mindset shift that kind of got you like, you know what, I'll just start my own business kind of thing?
I don't think there was one major turning point, but it was during the holiday season that I was just watching lots of TV, and then working in the retail shops, and I realized that the management of this organization, because I had just been through all this great management training, I was identifying all the mistakes that they were making. I thought, I could do my own thing. I have enough experience. I've been in consulting, where they were billing me out at outrageous rates and paying me a significant amount less. Mm-hmm. I thought, well, what if I go do this? And I now have this leadership training that I got that was invaluable to me. I had the tech skills. Why not go out and go for it? What's the worst they could say is no. Mm-hmm. And I didn't need a whole lot of startup costs. I was smart enough to go fill out the paperwork and do the research on my own. And I think it was really seeing poor leadership in the retail space.
Yeah.
And thought, I can do better than this. And that was the holiday season, even just trying to herd cats and manage customer service. I thought, I can do better than this.
That belief in self.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. You mentioned kind of reskilling and leadership skills. How do you think we need to balance between soft skills like leadership versus technical skills like coding, programming, all those things nowadays as we kind of navigate this digital world we're in?
It depends greatly on the individual. And I've managed a lot of people in very large teams. My last role was close to 1,000 individuals, and everyone is different. And understanding and being a good leader means that you understand what's really motivating people and where they want to go. So depends. So I would say the soft skills are mandatory for anybody pursuing management. I think that you assume that going into management is the only route to getting promoted or making more money, but that's not always true. There are technical fellowship programs, and the tech folks that really want to be tech people, that don't want to lead people or don't want to do the soft skill work, there's so much rapidly changing technology that they can continually learn and upskill themselves. Look at how fast AI and generative AI came out, and we can't get enough people in there. SAP, the same way everybody's rolling out S4, there's a massive shortage. Somebody can go learn the technology and the business process behind that. But the leadership piece, if you really want to pursue a leadership track, it's absolutely necessary to learn how to be a leader. It's not enough to have, I know this technical space. You have to learn how to motivate people, how to inspire, how to drive, how to innovate. A lot of different types of personalities, because not everybody on your team is going to think the same way. Not everybody's going to have the same skills, the same confidence. So your leadership has to be flexible enough to change. And that's only taught through actual work and learning that kind of skill. The people that don't do that end up being terrible leaders, and they lose talent. They don't get things done, or they only know how to manage one type of person that's just like them. And in this world of diversity and inclusion, it's not just diversity in background and color and religion. In gender, it is background and thought. There are so many different generations that think differently. And right now we've got boomers and Gen Xers and millennials and now Gen Z coming in.
Yeah.
If you have a team of all four, you are going to be a flexible leader.
Yes. Generational diversity.
Generational diversity is because it's truly mandatory to stay on top of it. And then you can't just say, oh, I've been through this leadership training, I know how to deal with it. I stay up abreast of everything. I try to study as much as I can, because the soft skills do change too.
Right.
And how you respond and how the world changes around you, you have to stay on top of it. And just like you have to stay on the top of the technical training and the reskilling there, it's like doctors. There's new technology all the time. They have to get recertified all the time.
Right.
And so do lawyers. There's new laws that come out. There's new technology that comes out. We have to stay on top of it and make sure that we give our teams the time to do that work.
Was there something that blocked you from being the best leader you could be that you learned to overcome?
Everybody has blind spots. And I think that there's probably still blind spots that I haven't even been made aware of yet, but I try to get as much feedback as I can. The blockers for me, I think, one of the big ones was really staying in tune to what people are going through. The larger your teams get, the harder it is to stay in tune with all levels of your organization. You don't know everybody's names. Even though they know yours, you want to, but you can't always rely on that. And so trying to get connected to people as my teams scaled was really one of the blind spots that I realized I had kind of early in the last 5 to 10 years, because my teams rapidly grew. I went from 50 to 100 to 300 to 1,000. Wow. And it really is a different game when you're managing that many people. So I think one of the blind spots that I had at the time was I thought I needed to know everybody's name and how to get connected to them. And I realized I had to change my approach and really use the power of my town hall, not to be preaching at people, but to hear back from them. So I had seen so many senior leaders do these webinar town halls where you don't see faces of anybody. You really preach, you're just preaching out the message and flowing down and not really getting that feedback. And they only do it once a quarter. I realized that I needed to change it to once a month. And I needed to make it more interactive. I needed to hear from them.
How do you do that? How do you make that interaction more
with
two-way?
1,000 people?
Yeah.
Believe it or not, they're very well behaved. The Zoom calls and the Zoom chat, you can record all the Zoom chat and get questions. And I had a moderator who was amazing at sharing. I offered and I carved out specific time to make sure that people could speak up if they wanted to, raise their hand.
Right.
And the more I did it, when you do it every single month, everybody's comfortable. They're like, okay, I can ask anything.
You built an environment of trust.
But you've got to be ready to answer anything. As a leader, sometimes you've got to be prepared for the unexpected questions. But typically when there's that environment of trust and the collaboration, they're so much more comfortable just saying, hey, I've heard this rumor. Is it true? And or is there something that we need to know about? And I was always transparent when I could be. And then I was honest when I couldn't be.
What were some of those difficult topics that kind of came up in town halls?
Most of the time, really in the last 2 years, it's been a lot about the merger that we were going through. We went through a very large merger of equals, two giant corporations in aerospace and defense. And the difficult topics were alignment of benefits that I can't do anything about. And it was the pandemic. We merged in April of 2020 and no one got to meet each other. So talk about a lack of trust. They didn't get to meet each other for a year and a half. So they're trying to build trust and work together over video from two very different cultures. Even though the companies had the same values, cultures are different and different perspectives and different benefits and different vacation days. And those are sensitive topics because somebody feels like they're getting shorted or
it directly impacts them.
It directly impacts them. And the worst part is the things I can't do anything about. The difficult topics that came up that I could do something about were the ones I was really excited to get. I loved it when somebody would come up and say, I'm having trouble getting responses back from this other group. Can you help? Oh, absolutely, I can help.
Yeah.
Yes, those are the things
Right.
that I want to hear. Don't wait until it's a problem that I can't fix if I can fix it.
Right.
And so they got to understand sometimes there was just nothing I could do about it. I wasn't setting policy on benefits and vacation time, but there were things that I could break down doors. We need a better relationship with this group. We need a better leadership direction from how we work together with another external group. And we did have to do a lot of that. Those were the ones I got really excited about. I wanted to hear about those problems.
I want to pause real quick here and give a special shout out to one of our sponsors, CG Infinity. I've worked with them for several years now, and I can truly say that they have one of the best workplace cultures that I've ever experienced. And they specialize in a variety of industries, especially energy, utilities, and financial services. And they serve them through their Salesforce, cloud, as well as customer experience services. So thank you, CG Infinity, and I hope you'll support them as they have supported us here at the podcast. And I know one of the things that you're very passionate and excited and very feel deeply on is mental health and mental wellness in the workplace.
Absolutely.
Tell us more about how that came about and
It's a hard story, but during the pandemic and during a lot of this stress and pressure that we were under, I unfortunately had a few of my employees, more than one and more than two, take their own lives during that time. And it really changed me as a leader. It made me realize that not everyone was going through things the same way. And in technology, a lot of times, I also had the software development team, and they were the personality type, stereotypical or not, it is typically introverted. And
keep our heads down.
Keep our heads down and get the work done. But you don't realize that their outlet were their work friends. And this one gentleman only had that in his life. And there were no family, no kids, and being isolated was really difficult on him. And you don't realize what somebody's going through on a Zoom call. You ask, hey, check in, are you okay? How's everything going, are you okay? And we drilled that into people, check on your teams, check on people. But it's the genuine check on. Are they checking a box by saying, hey, how are you doing? Or are my leaders actually saying, talk to me, tell me about your day, what have you been doing, how's everything going? Like, not just checking the box, but being truly genuine about it. And I realized that we didn't have the skills to deal with that. And I started really a campaign in my organization to make sure that we were doing it right and being truly genuine about supporting each other during hard times. If they're struggling with something, or somebody in their family was sick, stress from children being at home and homeschooling. But even up to this year, as recent as this year, we don't always realize what everybody's going through. And I did a mental health segment in one of my town halls, and I had asked my leadership team to be genuine and say, tell me how it's Mental Health Awareness Month. Let's address this. And they really came through. One of my amazing employees had dealt with the loss of her mother, and she shared with the entire team on this town hall that she had used the employee mental health line and had sought counseling from the RTX provided services. Another one of my leaders mentioned that she dealt with anxiety and depression her whole life, and that while she exercised a lot, that she also had to take medication. And these are senior executive leaders that are sharing with the entire population of my organization, the overwhelming feedback that we got was just moving. I mean, we had people in tears that it was so genuine.
Yeah.
And it prompted me to reach out to a friend of mine who works for a small leadership training company in the UK. And this amazing resource came and spoke at my next town hall and gave us some tips and tricks. Her name was Sarah from Fieri Leadership, and they were just so impactful, talking about how to manage change, how to support each other, where your pressure curve is, and how to identify it with your peers. And the team really stepped up too. My entire organization was so grateful to get some real tools from a professional on how to manage that pressure curve, because we were under a lot of deadline pressures, financial pressures, and they really created an environment. It was the team that did it. I just kind of sparked the fire, but they created an environment that truly supported one another, whether they were on the same team or not. They knew that if I'm having a downtime, I can reach out to one of my peers or somebody in a different group and ask for help, and nobody's going to judge. And that vice versa, if you've got extra bandwidth, volunteer to help. And I saw so much actual true result from it. You know, so many leaders think that being vulnerable diminishes your power or diminishes your authority.
Especially in a technical field.
In a technical field. It was aerospace and defense too. That's not necessarily the soft and fuzzy industry, right?
Yeah.
So the results just spoke for themselves. When I took over the corporate CIO role, we were at 8% attrition, and which was about average, not horrible, but not great. 18 months later, we were a rolling 12-month under 2% attrition. Wow. It bred so much loyalty just to create a comfortable environment. Not overly accommodating or lazy, but truly genuine. Yeah. You know, if you want to address mental health as a leader, you have to be genuine. If you're just checking a box, it has the opposite effect. Our on-time delivery, with everybody supporting each other, went from in the 75% up to 97% on-time delivery, just because we started helping each other out. It wasn't like we had a massive hiring, burst, but it was such an incredible and impactful time that I wanted to share more. I've been sharing a lot with other leaders that I know, just my personal experience with it, that we're always in a war for talent. If you really want to be a great place to work, be a great boss.
For the tech leaders that are watching this, right, that might feel the call to make a change and maybe adopt some of these mental wellness kind of initiatives, or even just to start, what would be some advice you would have to give them to maybe start to put these things in place, or even just to start thinking about putting these things in place?
Take a look at your leadership team. It's got to start with, do you trust them first? Do you have the right leadership team around you? Immediate direct reports. Do you have the right team that you trust enough to even ask their opinion? That's kind of the first, because I would say reach out and ask and open up the topic to your leaders. But if you have a hesitation, you probably don't have the right leadership team. So that's kind of step one.
Okay.
Because
yes,
if you're worried what I realized that my leadership team really stepped up to the plate. I had a powerhouse of a team around me. I didn't hesitate one bit when I approached the topic with them in private. Before we ever opened it up on a town hall, we had the conversation together in private.
Okay.
I didn't have any hesitation opening it up to that team. Had it even one or two people in that group been resistant or averse to it, it wouldn't have been successful.
Yeah.
And that's kind of do you have the right leadership team around you that's going to be invested in it? Because if you don't, it won't make it. But listening then would be the second. When I opened up the topic to to my organization, they had enough trust in each other and enough trust in me to really start to open up about it and give me the ideas of what they needed. Because every layer of the organization that we had knows what's going on in their group. They typically, if they're good leaders, they know who's struggling on their teams. They know who's connected, who's engaged, who's disconnected, who's starting to fall off, or who's had some kind of change recently in their performance or their behavior. And you have to listen to what's going on in the organization to then decide to respond how you want to respond. So if you have a completely healthy group and a healthy organization, maybe you don't need to start talking about different things. But what's going on in the organization? So at the time, our stock had taken a dramatic dip, a massive fall. There was a lot of financial pressures. Our budgets were getting cut. We were still working on merger activities, technical merger activities that were coming on deadlines. And that kind of pressure, I knew what was going on in the organization. Your situation may be different. So depending on what's going on in your organization, you find a different approach. It wouldn't be the same path that we took. Ours was a little more dramatic because of the merger and different cultures and people not knowing each other. But what is going on in your organization? What challenges are you facing? Because you may not think it as a leader. You feel like all the pressure is on you because you've got to meet your budgets, you've got to hit your sales targets. But your people feel it too. They feel it all the way down the chain. They hear the stress. They watch every move that you make.
It's like children.
They do. and
they see what your body language is more than just the words.
And they read everything into
Yeah.
it. If there's one misstep in a conversation, they are reading into it. Oh, what does that mean? If they don't trust you that you're transparent and you're open, or even when you can't be transparent and share with your team, you're honest about it, they're going to read into everything that you do, every move you make, every wink in your eye. Is she lying on that one? Yeah. So understanding your organization and then looking into the next steps. And honestly, I'm so grateful that I reached out to professionals because I was able to explain to them what we were going through, and then they were able to customize what to talk about based on what they were experiencing, what my teams were experiencing.
You know, even yesterday I watched a LinkedIn live show, and it was all around the loneliness epidemic. And it was the U.S. Surgeon General that was talking to someone on the LinkedIn team about that. And they talked about the power of work friends, right? And you mentioned this environment of trust and care. Any lessons or tips you would share with other leaders to nurture or create an environment of trust and care in the workplace?
Yeah, it starts with the transparency. It starts with really talking to people about getting a little bit out of their comfort zone and sharing a little more about them. But like I was saying, they mirror your behavior. So if you're genuine about it and you do it first, they're going to be a lot more comfortable to start to create that. And you don't tolerate someone who uses it against someone else. So we don't weaponize vulnerability. We support one another, and we also don't take advantage of it either. So really setting a good example and creating that environment that you want your organization to reflect is key. And it really getting kicked off in that loneliness. I know a lot of companies are now doing this mandating coming back into the office. they're mandating, all the mandates and, whether they decide to or not, or hybrid workforce. But it's the why behind it. And I think that loneliness, that loneliness syndrome that's happening, people have now, after 3.5 years now, or 3 years of pandemic, everybody's kind of gotten into the comfort zone of now not leaving the house, ordering in groceries, not even going to the grocery store. And it is driving a lot of loneliness, and they may not even recognize that that's what's driving it. Oh, well, I save so much time not commuting into the office. What are you missing out on, even just that interaction? Well, most of my team doesn't work out of this office, but other people do.
Yeah.
Do you need to talk to them? Is there another group that you may have interactions with? Water cooler conversations, have somebody to go to lunch with.
Yeah.
And it's really valuable that they have that type of interaction, even if it's just a couple days a week, forcing you to shower and put on real clothes and get in your car and remember how to drive. I think that's incredibly valuable. And like I said, even if your team doesn't work in your office and they're in another part of the country, and even if you're going in to sit on Zoom calls most of the time, you're not going to be there by yourself. You're going to be talking to other people in the office. And it's really, we've got to force ourselves to kind of get back out there again.
Yeah. It reminds me of, I suddenly had a flash of like the caveman days where it was all about the tribe and sitting around in a circle around the fire.
Right.
And it was like a punishment to ostracize somebody and have them go out on their own.
Yeah.
And I think we're wired for belonging and connection.
We are. Even introverts that say they don't want to be, everybody still wants to be loved. It's one of our, it's one of our core needs, right? So they have to feel that connection. And I think that we've turned a job into just a job, and we've gotten away from the passion behind the mission. And in my hiring, I don't always necessarily look for somebody who checks every box of every skill set. I want to see the passion and the drive and the curiosity behind a mission. And I think it's incredibly valuable to find that spirit in all of us again. Even if you're an introverted, you have a passion for something. So find it, and why not make it a passion for your career instead of just a job and a paycheck?
Janet, what do you think your legacy and passion project will be for the remaining part of your career?
I want to spread that culture. I think when I say that it impacted me during the pandemic, losing employees, it is now my mission to find that culture and empower people to then take it forward. There's a difference between kindness and being nice. That they say, oh, nice is a lazy man's leadership. And I said, well, kindness is not. Kindness is very different than nice. Nice means, you're glossing over feedback and you're telling them, the nice sandwich when you give the feedback, positive, constructive, positive. Kindness is recognizing and being invested in and helping somebody find their path. If they're not succeeding in what they're looking at now or what they're doing now, how do we find them the right fit? How do we encourage them down the right path, not just give them the nice sandwich? It's being kind and being invested in others. And one of my friends had shared with me, it was a quote that said, sometimes you're meant to follow your dreams, and then other times you're meant to encourage others or guide others on their paths to their dreams. And I think towards the sunset of my career now, I want to create a culture and set it up that I can empower and encourage others to follow their dreams.
Beautiful.
Thanks.
Well, Janet, thank you. Thank you for your time, your wisdom, your open vulnerability and sharing. I really do feel like the more we can have that, especially in technical, STEM, engineering, science kind of fields, the better. So thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad we were able to finally connect and get this done.
Absolutely. Shout out to Valerie Freeman that introduced us as well. And thank you all for tuning in. Be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Tech Legacies, and leave us some feedback on our podcast channels so that we can continually improve and provide content that is valuable to you. We'll see you next time on Tech Legacies. At Tech Legacies, we're all about helping technology professionals grow and succeed in their careers by sharing the advice of top technology executives. If you're looking to take your career to the next level and become a technology executive yourself, we have an exciting program to tell you about. It's called the Tech CXO Excellence Program by Tech CXO Launchpad, and they are our partners. They're offering an immersive, multimodal program developed and taught by current and former CIOs and CTOs who are passionate about building the next generation of C-suite technology executives. And you'll experience a full immersion into the C-suite world and also get to collaborate, network, and experience capstone-style projects with other professionals. And this is all while benefiting from face-to-face interactions in person with industry guest speakers. It is exclusively for a new level of C-suite executives and C-level direct reports and second directs who are earmarked for succession planning and career growth. To join their waitlist, register your interests at www.techcxolaunchpad.com. That's techcxolaunchpad.com. This program has everything you need to take your career to the next level.